I was always surrounded by strong women in the law, and I was always really inspired by seeing them get up and go to work every day at the office. I've always liked arguing and reading and writing. And so it felt like it was a good way to use those skills. And also, more practically, I thought about what jobs I could potentially have longevity in, because you never know how CMT will progress and affect you. And I figured that working in an office, having my degree solidified and my career in motion, that should things spin out in a way that I don't necessarily want to happen, that I will have some kind of job security and skills and be able to keep working should things just progress quicker than I hope that they do.
Hello, everyone. This is Chris and Lizzo.
We are a brother-sister team.
And on behalf of the Charcot-Marie-Tooth Association, aka CMTA, we are coming at you.
Coming at you from coast to coast. I live in California and Chris lives in snowy Vermont.
Yes, and this is another episode of our podcast named what, Lizzo?
CMT for me. CMT, the number 4, me.
A community-focused podcast dedicated to those with CMT, giving them a voice in the community to share their stories, good or bad, successes, challenges, and much, much more. And with that, we are starting 2023 off with a bang, Lizzo.
Happy New Year, 2023.
Oh, my goodness. Ooh. Hey, okay, listeners, she's pretty fired up. I'm sure you can tell.
Have you made any New Year resolutions, Chris?
The New Year is just another day from my perspective. However, I was thinking maybe I'll do more skiing and cycling. What do you think, Lizzo? I don't get enough of these activities.
You do that like every day.
Oh, okay.
Can't you come up with something unique?
Not really.
Oh, okay. No. Well, I kind of agree with you that resolutions are just kind of lame.
Yeah.
But when I started thinking about it, like why wait to the first? But I'm kind of falling into that now, and I'm just trying to learn a new dance move once a week and trying to find fame on Instagram.
Oh my goodness.
That's my resolution.
Wow. That's great. I guess
me.
I will disconnect from you on Instagram. So, actually, you know what I was thinking is I was down in the basement of the house and I bought this guitar a few years ago, and I used to play when I was little. And I said, you know what, maybe this year I'll spend some time learning guitar and the drums. And boy, my wife Mia is going to love it when I'm banging on those drums at 11 at night during the week.
I think you should do that.
I'm thinking about it.
All right. Well, when does Lila graduate, Chris? In May sometime, right? From the University of Virginia?
Yeah.
Well, I'm attending that graduation.
That'll be awesome.
It's going to be really, really fun.
Lizzo, before you go to a graduation, don't embarrass yourself by speaking the wrong terms. A few things to remember at UVA, okay? So
what do you mean
up.
Embarrass myself? I don't care what people think.
Here we go. I've done it a million times. I'm still learning. Okay.
You get a hard time.
Now, Lila is a 4th year. You don't say she's a senior. She's a 4th year. Okay.
Okay.
And when we're walking, you don't say, let's go out on the campus. It's grounds. Okay.
Is that really important?
It's very important. You might get beat up if you say the wrong word. So I've come close. And it's wahoo wah. Okay.
What's a wahoo wah? Wah wah.
Well, that's an alternative name for the Cavaliers or the students at
called
University of Virginia.
Wahs?
Yeah. I know you usually go woohoo, but it's not woohoo. It's wahoo wah. And this is going to fit right in with today's guest speaker.
Yeah, because did you know that today's guest is studying at the University of Virginia too? She's doing her graduate work at the law school. It's a really, really highly rated law school.
Are we interviewing Maddie Brown today?
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. And I'm all prepared. Look at what I have on. I've got my UVA hat, my winter hat. I've got my UVA t-shirt. Go Cavs. I'm all fired up. And now we have Maddie.
All right. Hey, I met Maddie quite a long time ago. I think the first time was at a youth outing with the CMTA in Florida. And then I had lunch with her once with her sister and her dad who came to the area. But she's gone through so much in her life with CMT, but you wouldn't know it from talking with her, right? She had scoliosis surgery. then during that school, and that's a lot of nuts and bolts and screws and back braces. And then she had bilateral foot surgery. Then she went to high school and got Helios braces, walking around with those braces with her back straight, and more surgery on her toes. It's unbelievable.
On top of that, despite all of these challenges, and correct me if I'm wrong, but she landed an internship at the private office of Barack and Michelle Obama, and got another internship and then job at Barack Obama Foundation. I think she still works for them virtually. Also being campus leader and president of Students Against Sexual Assault at GWU, choosing University of Virginia School of Law. And today she's navigating law school with CMT. Pretty impressive. So Maddie,
woo!
One question.
Wahoo-wah.
Wahoo-wah. In terms of UVA, are you considered a 7th year or an 8th year? Or what is it now?
So do we call you an octo?
Yeah, what do we call it?
I don't know. I actually haven't thought about, I have been in school an alarming amount of time. In terms of law school, I am a 2nd year in law school, or a 2L.
Okay.
So I'm officially halfway through.
All right, cool. Now, listen, Lizzo, great introduction to Maddie, right? What do you think?
I think so too. What do you think, Maddie?
I think, you covered the major strokes.
Okay.
But it's nice to meet everyone. Hi.
Yes,
hi,
great.
Maddie.
And thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're very, very busy. So let's get down to the nitty gritty, because you said we covered the major strokes, but now we want the minor ones. We want all the details to fill all that in. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm originally from outside of Rochester, New York. I was diagnosed with scoliosis at the age of 3. And for 9 years after that, I wore a back brace. I was unaware of having any CMT symptoms, though in hindsight, they were all very obvious once I was getting the CMT diagnosis. And then when I turned 12, I got a major back surgery to include rods and screws into my spine. And that kind of felt like that was going to be the end of all of my doctor's appointments and health problems. And I was going to go into being a teenager normal, quote unquote.
Right.
And when I was going through all of the tests and processes to get the back surgery, that's when they discovered that I had CMT. I have 4C. No one else in my family, or no one else in my family's memory, had CMT. So it was kind of just a unlucky stroke of the gene luck, how I ended up there. Since then, I've been going through various surgeries and braces to help navigate the world with CMT, but I still can walk around with leg braces, and that's the main mode of help that I use with my own disability.
So I have a question first,
Lizzo,
Chris. Okay.
Well, let me ask mine first.
Okay, go ahead.
You referenced a lot of this going on at the age of 12, right? So just as you're about to go into high school, and what I recall, you made a few references when we did our pre-interview that I think you said something like high school, your first year in high school was like the worst time of your life with all this stuff going on. So would you mind telling us, our listeners and us, a little bit about that experience, what you were going through at that time?
Yeah, definitely. So I had, at the age of 12, like I said, I got the diagnosis, and pretty quickly after that, I started to decline rapidly. Until then, I could basically walk without a lot of help, and I didn't really notice. I didn't have stair problems, but after I got the spinal fusion surgery, it was a very rapid decline of my feet turning over. And so by the time that I got out of 8th grade and going in between 8th grade and 9th grade, I got a foot surgery, but that foot surgery happened about 2 weeks before high school started, which meant that I started high school in a wheelchair with kind of double casts on.
Oh, you didn't stand out at all, did you? No.
Definitely not at all. It was definitely one of the hardest parts of my entire life, because being 14 is already angsty enough, and like being such a sight walking in or being rolled in by my dad to the high school was quite the experience. But the hardest part of all of that was just that it set me back on my ability to feel comfortable in my own skin, because I was so out of control at that time of my life of what was happening. It was just a very difficult time, because I eventually did get out of the wheelchair and walked with a kind of a walking boot for a while. And then there was a brief amount of time where I wasn't wearing braces in high school at all, which was a mistake. I should have just went into the braces immediately, but you live and you learn. But that entire kind of period of my life was just very difficult, because it felt like I didn't want to open up to anyone about what was happening in my own life because I didn't want to be seen as othered, but also grappling with the fact that everyone still knew who I was because either
Mm,
the wheelchair caught their eye or my walking gait caught their eye. And so being known by everyone, but no one actually knowing me was definitely the hardest part of high school. And I definitely feel for anyone else going through that because
sure.
it's such a formative time of your life. And having that to grapple with as well is very difficult.
Maddie, what were your coping skills since you didn't talk to people about your CMT? I don't know how your family supported you if you had internal dialogues there, but what were your coping skills? I mean, some people go to drugs or alcohol, or some people get obsessive about certain things. What were your coping skills?
So I would say while I wasn't open about it to the general student body or anything, I did have a close group of friends that knew and supported me and knew what was going on. And my family has always been really amazing with kind of dealing with it all ever since I got the diagnosis. I still like turned into my inner circles. They weren't as big as maybe, the whole school community could have been had I been more open with the fact, but I still definitely like relied on my own personal circles to kind of guide me through it and just being surrounded by people who understood and didn't make me feel bad about not being able to do things that they wanted to do. I like my friends never suggested that we go on a hike or something
Yeah.
because that was just, especially at that time when I wasn't wearing braces, just something that was completely off the table for me. They were always willing to do activities that I could be a part of. And the same goes to for my family. I got some jobs in high school that I really enjoyed and helped me feel like I was staying active and moving, but didn't require, any heavy lifting or anything. I worked at a pizza shop as a counter girl, and then I was also a pharmacist technician at a pharmacy. So I felt like those kind of jobs were good for someone like me because it did require me to stay up on my feet all day and kept me staying active and not just kind of sitting at home in my room alone, not moving. But at the same time, they were jobs that I could still do within my own physical capability.
Yeah.
What were your
So
internal dialogues though? Like, you have these coping things with family and they're supportive, but and if you don't feel comfortable, don't answer. But, like I just think of myself, I'm very kind of catastrophic thinking. I have a lot of anxiety. So that might not speak to you, but everyone has internal dialogues. And I'm just wondering
Mhm.
what those were and how you combated the
Yeah,
scarier things.
definitely. It definitely got better as I got older. Certainly at the age of 12 through 14, I thought my life was absolutely over and like
mm,
I was never going to be able to do anything. I was never going to leave home. I was never going to be able to go to college. Those were really dark times of my life just because all of the like general angst of being a younger teenager and then just being told like, it's going to get worse like over time there's no cure and it's never going to get better was very, very, very hard to deal with from the age of 12 to 14. I feel like after like I started to get out of that kind of thought spiral was by, distracting myself with my friends and my jobs. And I was a lot of future thinking of maybe I wasn't thinking about my life 10 years from now, but I was like, college will come and I can kind of escape this cycle and this group of people who's known me my whole life and has kind of watched me go through all of this. I can find new people who will just know me immediately and we can start a new perception of who I am. And I think that was also really helpful is thinking that as hard as those years were of my life, I knew that high school is never going to last forever and pushing forward on that kind of thought is what helped me a lot.
and that's something I wrote down because you did reference that. You commented prior that high school is not going to last forever. So they gave you some hope going forward. And then it just sounds like friends and family are so important. And that's been pretty common in a lot of interviews. People really relying upon their family and friends. And that seems like that helps a lot of folks get through those stages. So one thing you've referenced as well was braces and not wearing braces. And in
Mhm.
hindsight, you should have like tell me a little bit about that. Why didn't you want to wear braces?
Yeah. So I got my first surgery at 14. I recovered from it. It's definitely, though, since I had the back surgery, I was never able to walk like I was pre the back surgery. So that foot surgery did definitely help, and it staved off any major symptoms for about a year. But after that, it just got really bad. I would wear like store ankle bracelets,
Mm.
or like the black ones that you'd wrap around. And then I was always wearing UGG boots, which I just cringe about thinking about at this moment, because I had to have as much support as I possibly could on my ankles.
Yeah,
And
there's no
that's the way.
support with those boots.
No, no, but it was better than your regular sneaker. And I did that just because I had always, especially at that time, been like, I really just want to blend in. I don't
Yeah.
want to be looked at. And I just felt that if I had leg braces on, like that's all anyone would ever see from me. And so in my stubborn teenage years, I definitely held off way longer than I should have with not wearing braces, just because I have pretty hammer toes, and they are the constant reason why I'm tripping all the time if I'm not wearing braces. And so by the time of my junior year of high school, it was like a good week if I didn't trip over my toe, which is also, a bad thing, especially with my CMT, is I can't stand up without holding on to anything. So if I'm tripping and I have nowhere to grab onto, I can't stand back up. It eventually got to the point where I was like, you're actively harming your quality of life, and
Right.
like you need to just like grow up and wear the leg brace. I wish I had just done it immediately at 14,
Yeah.
because I feel like it would have been a lot easier just on my muscles and my ability to keep up with people. But ultimately, I'm so happy that I did decide to get braces, because I would absolutely be nowhere without those leg braces. Those leg braces do basically everything for me, and why I can continue to lead an independent life and live away from home or without people who are directly around to assist me all the time. And it's completely because of leg braces. So
Yeah.
we got
So
there eventually.
it's awesome. And your parents at this time, did they basically give you the freedom to, if you want to wear the braces, wear them. If you don't, don't? Or was it one of those things like you walked out of the house to school with braces, you had your Uggs in your backpack, and as soon as you got let off, you took the braces off and shoved your Uggs on and went into class? Well, I have this traumatic experience. So my mother, our mother, when I was in fourth grade, it's like springtime and it's 70 degrees outside. And because I had like allergies and asthma and all that stuff, and she was always worried about me, she made me wear a full snowsuit to school.
Yeah.
So I'm standing there where everyone's like shedding their like coats and they're in sleeves. And I'm just like up against the school in a full snowsuit with snow boots.
And honestly, we lived right across the street from the school. So all he had to do was cross the road.
Yeah.
And he was like this,
Seriously.
just walking like this. So we're all like,
yeah,
it's true. I'll never forget that. Having to walk across the street in a full snowsuit, his hat, his boots.
Yeah, in May. That's cool.
Yeah. I used to do it to myself, because I'd walk around in UGG boots and shorts in the middle of summer. Yeah. And it's like, girl, just put on leg braces. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. No, I think my parents, they would have loved if I wore the braces. They would have loved it, but they never, ever pushed me into doing anything. They always respected my own processing of having CMT. I think that also might be because no one else in the family has CMT. It might have been a different story if it was the kind where almost everyone in the family gets it. But because I was the only one, I think part of them felt guilty for what happened, even though it's not anyone's fault. But there was a lot of, how could this possibly happen? And I think they were really generous in letting me deal for a decade very angstily with how to process the realization that you do have a chronic illness, and it's something that it's not life ending, but it's certainly life changing. And they've always been very supportive. I know wholeheartedly they would have forced me in braces if they had the opportunity to.
Yeah. Well, they sound awesome. I mean,
No,
to be able to support you like that. As a parent, you want to do everything for your kids, and that's great.
You feel kind of powerless as a parent.
You do.
I tell you.
Yeah.
You just, do what you can. So I was wondering, Maddie, do you have a story for us? And I'm just popping this on you, but like a story when you fell and you couldn't get up, or like when we were talking to Bethany Malash, she said she just is afraid of crossing the road. And
Yeah.
I was there with her one day where she just tripped and she's in the middle of the road and cars are waiting and it's just really hard. And how do you deal with those kind of things?
That's funny that you brought up Bethany because I was actually going to speak to that. I've always loved hearing her talk about her own CMT journey. And I remember years ago, I had heard her talk about that exact thing, the falling in the street. And when I was younger at that time, that isn't something that had entirely crossed my mind because I didn't at the time do a lot of walking on the street, especially without people around me. But then when I moved to George Washington in Washington, D.C., I was city walking all of the time. And so I feel like one of those falls in the middle of the street, I remember it was right in the middle of a huge intersection. It was, I had tripped over my boot. I was trying to wear these new boots. It was going okay. And then it wasn't. And I remember in that moment I remember falling to the ground and I was like, I can't believe this is happening. Like the thing that like I've been thinking about for so long, I can't believe it actually finally happened. Very luckily for me, there were plenty of people in the crosswalk that were able to help me up and get me across the street. And it was definitely, I feel, a pretty low point of living in the city because I felt like I can't live here if this is going to keep happening. And it was so scary that it had happened once. And, I had a whole little meltdown about it. And I remember I had plans with my student organization later that night. And I was like, I'm not going to go. Like, I can't like pull myself together after this. But with some deep breaths and like talking to people, it was like, unfortunately, we live the kind of life where like you fall down, you have to keep getting back up. I couldn't let that one major fall in the middle of the street blow up my whole life and schedule. Letting those falls kind of roll off your back, it definitely just takes time and practice. I can't like imagine what that would have done to me when I was like at 14. But at that point, I had already had several embarrassing falls in my life. Hard as it was in that moment to be like, this is a worst fear coming true. And I can't believe it actually happened. By that time, I had like developed enough resilience to be like, okay, you can have your little meltdown about it, but then it's time, like you just have to stand back up and keep moving forward.
It's sort of a metaphor for life
great.
in general, right? Yeah. I was just thinking how resilient Maddie is. And resiliency is the key to a happy and successful life. And you're an extremely resilient young woman. I'm just so proud of you, just listening to you, how you've gone through all these challenges and you're overcoming barrier after barrier after barrier.
Yeah, you keep going.
Phenomenal.
Right? Phenomenal.
It's phenomenal.
Thank you.
That word runs in our family because I said it when I was interviewed on television once. And one of those things you get interviewed for 30 seconds on television. And I think I said phenomenal like
10
times.
And I never use that word in my vocabulary. I'm just like watching myself. I'm like, oh my God, what an idiot.
He's like, oh, it's phenomenal. The slopes are phenomenal. Oh, the phenomenal snow. It's just a phenomenal day.
I can't wait to hear what my own family picks out of this podcast.
That's great.
And drags me for.
There's not much. You are so well spoken.
So growing up, and I assume even today, what's the environment like when you're meeting new people? Do you find people ask you questions? Hey, Maddie, is there something you have? Or do you just break the ice and say, hey, you might be wondering, this is what I have. How do you handle that? Because I assume over your years, you've had people ask you a lot of questions or people just stare. So how do people navigate through that?
I have found that I generally don't get asked a lot of direct questions, depending on the situation. A lot of times I feel like people are afraid of offending. And so they'll just, as you said, stare and kind of look and ponder what could possibly happening. But a lot of people, I feel like, especially in college, kind of 18-year-old time, and then also going into law school, they don't necessarily verbalize their questions. So for the people who have directly verbalized it, I have no problem expressing what's going on. A lot of people usually come at it with me specifically, they'll be like, why are you limping? Sure. And I just always like joke it off like, oh, I'm always like that. You know what I mean? Right. Like it's not a short-term thing, but for the people who don't ask and for the people who it's not like something I just go around announcing in the the big hallway of the law school. But for the people that need to know, I have no problem just telling them, because most of the time when you explain to people what's wrong, they're incredibly generous and accommodating. And, you're never going to have the perfect response from people. And
Right.
some people don't give you the response that you want. But for the most part, I find that just telling people is a lot easier than having them guess and kind of ask, well, oh, what's up with her? It's a lot easier to just start off the bat of, okay, if we're going somewhere, can we take the elevator?
Yeah.
Things like that have just made interactions with meeting new people so much easier. I appreciate that I've started to do more, especially since I left high school. I feel like I've been fairly open with all the new people I meet that I do have some physical limitations if we're going to go out and do something. And I've generally been met with pretty positive responses.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
role play. Let's role play. Let's role play.
Okay. Here we go.
Hey, Maddie, I've noticed that you kind of limp and you have a hard time holding things. Like, what's up with that? Like, what's going on? I was just wondering, because my brother has a thing. I was wondering if it was the same thing.
Yeah, so I have Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, which is
Wait, you have what? You have what?
I know.
I know, right?
I do love throwing in the Charcot-Marie-Tooth, because people are usually like, is that a dental problem?
Wait,
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
still role playing. Is that a dental problem?
No, it's actually a neuromuscular problem. I have a progressive neuromuscular disease that slowly eats away at the nerves in my hands and feet. So I just use leg braces to help me get through life. And I love an elevator over the stairs.
That's a great way to explain it. It was short, sweet, and to the point.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, oh man.
Anyone can ask follow-up questions all they want, but if you just leave it at that, people are normally like, oh, okay, I get it. Even if I don't understand what the heck a Charcot-Marie-Tooth is, they basically can get it from that.
Absolutely. That was wonderful. That was really, really good.
That's the elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch.
Literally
Or speech.
and physically.
Seriously, that's great.
That's right.
Right? Exactly.
So why are you studying law?
Yeah.
What kind of law? Are you going to sue me after this podcast?
I know.
Absolutely not.
I think you meant, is it transactional law?
Yeah, so I'll be doing more transactional and regulatory work. I'm going to be at a law firm that is based in London. So they're going to do a lot of work bringing European and Asian businesses into the United States market. So my role as a United States attorney in that law firm will be helping them move through the regulation, and different agencies and federal or state governments will essentially be my role in that. Why law specifically? My grandmother is an attorney, or was an attorney, and my mother is currently an attorney. So I was always surrounded by strong women in the law, and I was always really inspired by seeing them get up and go to work every day at the office. I've always liked arguing and reading and writing. And so it felt like it was a good way to use those skills. And also, more practically, I thought about what jobs I could potentially have longevity in, because you never know how CMT will progress and affect you. And I figured that working in an office, having my degree solidified and my career kind of in motion, that should things spin out in a way that I don't necessarily want to happen, that I will have some kind of job security and skills and be able to keep working should things just progress quicker than I hope that they do.
Yeah. And what type of law does your mom practice? And what did your grandmother practice?
My grandma did healthcare work. So she worked with a lot of insurance companies and their clients. And then my mom does commercial real estate transactions.
Okay.
Oh, so
and they were both
all different.
Yeah, they were both based in Rochester.
So we're safe, Lizzo. They're not like prosecutors.
You're
or something.
good.
Yeah,
You're
I'm
good.
never going to be
good.
bringing
good.
businesses over
No.
from Europe or China. Or
Will you be
anywhere
going
else.
to London, Maddie?
I hope so.
That'll be cool, huh?
That was always, I feel like in another life, I would have wanted to spend a good chunk of time in London, just because I've always really liked traveling, and I feel like being able to do it in a job sense will be that dream coming true a little bit.
You can always stay with Bethany. She has an extra guest room. Yeah, she does.
I'll let her know personally that you invited
Exactly.
me.
Yeah.
She'll listen to this. She'll be
Open
like,
invite.
whatever.
I can't recall which episode it was, but if you need to practice like a British accent, in one of the podcasts, I spoke in a British accent. So that can really really help you if
All
you do
right.
the
Yeah.
journey to the UK.
I'll take
Yeah,
notes.
actually, the couple of those podcasts, he speaks with a British accent. So I
Yeah,
think you
so
could
it's
pick
really
up
good.
a lot from
Yeah.
his work. But I'm wondering, have you traveled extensively, or do you hope to travel extensively?
I definitely hope to travel extensively. I've been able to do some fun trips with the help of my dad. If I
Yeah.
didn't have my dad there dragging me along, I don't think I was able to do it. I think one of my biggest traveling moments was walking the Royal Mile in Edinburgh, Scotland, from the top of the castle all the way to the bottom and then almost all the way back to our
Wow.
hotel. I can't even tell you how bad my legs hurt the next day, but it was worth it in that kind of experience of just getting to go on the major walks because my sister and dad, I forget what the big mountain outside of the city is called, but they get to walk up all of that. But I was still like, well, I got to walk the Royal
Good
Mile and
for you.
I was
That's
proud
awesome.
about that. So I hope to do more traveling in the future, particularly cities that have a lot of good public transit.
Yeah.
I'm excited because I feel like that'll be very helpful for me. Not necessarily relying on the long distance walking, but if I can, take a train from place to place,
Yeah.
that's what I hope to do soon.
Do you hope to live in DC? Is that what your
Yes.
goal is? Yeah. That's
Yes, yeah.
that's a pretty disabled friendly
Yeah,
environment.
I found on the East Coast, it's one of the easiest cities for me personally to navigate. I really, really wanted to find a law firm job in DC because I knew if I had to live in New York City, I would do it, but that it would be a much larger struggle. So I'm really happy that I've ended up in DC because I felt really comfortable the 4 years that I lived there in undergrad.
Good. So Maddie, do you have any?
Wait, Chris, don't come to San Francisco. The other day,
Yeah.
we went to San Francisco to the Exploratorium, and I looked, and I actually have a picture of this. There was a parking place, and the handicap sign was in the middle of the parking spot, so no one could park there.
What?
Oh no.
What the heck?
Really?
No,
Yeah, I took
and it
a
makes
picture.
me so sad because I love San Francisco.
Yeah,
I love San Francisco. It is not a CMT friendly
Not at
city,
all.
not
but
at
I do
all.
love San Francisco. Go Giants.
Yeah. Maddie, do you interact with other individuals that have CMT? Like, do you have any friends that have CMT, or do you go to any support groups or anything like that?
Yeah, so I don't have any direct friends that I keep in contact with CMT, but all of the interactions that I've had with other people have mostly been through the CMTA.
Yeah.
You mentioned that I was at the Orlando thing, and I feel like that was one of the most comfortable times I've ever felt in my life. Is there was a big group of us walking around. I don't remember which park, but one of
Yeah.
the parks for 10 hours straight.
It was
And
long.
honestly, if you had told me that at that time, I don't think I was wearing braces then, that I was going to make it around Walt Disney for 10 hours straight without my sister was with me, but without my parents. I don't think I would have believed you. I don't know what possessed us that day, but it felt like all of us had like a lot of energy working off of each other. And it was a really great experience to be surrounded by people who, go at your pace.
Yeah.
I remember that Julie Barron was there, and then
she was?
Jonah, and I think Bethany was there.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a great group of individuals, right? To
So much
bond
fun.
with.
So much fun.
So, Maddie, what would you say to someone, say, newly diagnosed with CMT that's maybe in their early teens and they're saying, oh my God, I just got diagnosed with CMT. My life is over. I don't know what to do. This is the worst thing. How would you coach that person?
So I would say to someone who is recently diagnosed, particularly someone who's younger, that it's okay to go at your own pace in processing that information. I feel like with hindsight, older me is thinking about how, oh, I should have done this or I should have been like this. And I mean, that those kind of thought processes only go so far because at the same time, I want to extend sympathy to my younger self who was facing such a life changing bout of information. There are so many inspiring young people and leaders in this community and communities in general, but it's okay. I would tell them if you are not quite there yet, I would encourage you to be gentle with yourself and understand that acceptance isn't going to be a straight line. It has the potential to take several years, but that the people who are around you whether it be your friends, family, or the greater CMTA community, is there for you in processing that information. You also can't let it completely drown your life forever. You do need to eventually push forward, and if you have cultivated those support pockets in your life, those are the people who can help push you forward and keep you on that road to acceptance. Your whole life isn't going to be CMT. I know it feels like it, especially when you get first diagnosed. It feels like this is the only thing that you'll ever be known for, remembered for, or people will ever think about you for. And it's just not true. It's okay if you don't necessarily believe that now, but I promise you will in the future. There will be a day where you want to like push forward yourself. And I encourage you to do that. And I encourage you to be brave. There are so many things in my life that I would have missed out on if I had continued to be afraid and not wanting to move forward. I'm grateful to my past self for taking the time that I needed to process all that information, but also knew when it was time to push forward and move on with my life. So that's my greatest piece of information, and always rely on the people around you and the greater CMT community at large, because we all know what you're going through.
That is an incredible response.
Whew.
I mean, oh my God, you are like a natural born leader. Like Lizzo said, you're very well spoken, very thoughtful. It's great in terms of that response and something to think about in the future. You have a lot of ways to give back to those with CMT, just through your experiences and how you express yourself. It's amazing.
I was just going to say that, Maddie. I'm hoping once you get through school and you get established that you will look back at the CMT, because you have so much to offer people that are struggling today. And you have a way about you that people will listen. It's a gift. So thank you.
Lizzo,
thank you.
You had a few fun questions. I think
we do have some fun questions for Maddie.
Do you think now's the time?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, go for it.
I'll start. Think about this and I'll give you an example. If you were a member of Congress, is there a law you would abolish or pass? For example, in Arizona, they passed a law prohibiting a sleeping donkey in your bathtub after 7 p.m. Yeah. That law, I think, was abolished, but it was because of some story. Some laws get passed, and then, that was on a fun note. But on a serious note, or even a fun note, is there anything can you think of that you would abolish or pass?
Yes, I think the Americans with Disabilities Act is a wonderful first step in integrating people with disabilities into society and protecting them. I think that it doesn't have enough teeth to it, and it is wildly underenforced. And so I feel like if I was a congressperson, that would be one of the major goals of mine, is to reform the ADA and make sure it is much more heavily implemented than it currently is.
Sure.
I feel like going to law school has really made me aware of the fact that there are a lot of amazing, groundbreaking laws on the books, but they are unfortunately very underenforced. And so I feel like that would be one of the big things that I would want to push from the more serious side. From the silly side, I don't really know. There are a lot of silly laws on the books, let me tell you. I learned in crim law that there's laws absolutely collecting dust that haven't been prosecuted in 60 years and are still somehow on the books. So probably cleaning up those.
Yeah, there you go. That's a great, but I
love
love your first one that you said. That was a great answer.
Yeah. Here's one other question. Lizzo came up with this one, but I'll ask you. I think it's cool. All right. If the U.S. was carving a new Mount Rushmore, okay, new, which four figures would you want to be displayed there?
This is a difficult question.
It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a president. It could be like from an artist.
You can say you want Lizzo up there.
Well, like I hope that your dad.
Right. And even if it's just one that pops to your head.
Just a couple.
One. Yeah. Just a couple. Okay.
Yeah, don't give her one. At least a couple.
Jeez.
These are always the scariest questions to get asked at interviews. Because you're always like, what do they want me to say?
I know. Then your mind just goes blank.
Like, who is that? Who's a great leader? Yeah, there's not a lot of like individuals personally that I venerate,
admire.
So I'm just like, and I feel weird being like, oh, President Obama, because like that's also my boss.
But you can say that. That's a good thing to say. That's a good thing to say.
There are a lot of personal mentors in my
Okay.
life that if
Perfect.
this was my own
Yeah.
Rushmore that not everyone had to
Okay.
Right.
perceive
Let's say
that
your
I
own.
would put on.
And
So
maybe that's
I
better
could do that.
worded. If it was your own
Yeah,
Mount Rushmore, like your
I
own
could
in
I
your
could do that.
backyard, right? What would
Just
you
because
put on it?
I wouldn't want to
Perfect.
cast everyone
Yeah,
for the whole
I get it.
nation, but in my own personal Mount Rushmore, there are people who I think have certainly changed the course of my life and are really important mentors in my life. The first being my parents. I don't know if those are two spots, but I would give them. Wait, I
We'll
would
give
give
them
them
two.
one or two.
Totally.
I would give them one or two because, like I had said before in that previous answer, their unwavering kind of support and love and care that they've taken with me and having CMT is something that like I could never return the favor for. I'm so grateful for them for that. I would say I also had an English literature professor in my first year of GW who just gave me so much confidence in my own writing and reading ability and kind of wanting to pursue law school and that kind of thing. He made me take up an extra major of the English major because I just appreciated his perspective on life and also just how much care he devoted into my own personal development. I would also say that my first boss at the office of Barack Michelle Obama, she was just an incredible mentor from the professional skills building perspective and also just a woman that I really admire who kind of like carved her own career and path and did what she wanted with her life, which I find incredibly inspiring. I didn't feel like I could keep going, but
Right.
those
That's
four
great.
Well, that's awesome.
mentors
That's great.
in my life, in my head, I would build a statue for them just to mark what they've done for me in my life.
I love how
That's
you turned the
fantastic.
question around in your own personal Mount Rushmore. I just think that's
But
fabulous.
I like that. Yeah.
I do
think
too.
it's fantastic. Those are the folks that really have had a big impact on your life. I'm still a little disappointed
I
you
am
didn't say
too.
Chris and Lizzo, but
Me too, but
that's
you know,
okay.
You
I
know
was
what?
just like,
We can carve a whole space for if we don't have just people, we can carve the CMTA logo
Okay.
right
no,
up there as
that's
well.
not no.
We're fighting for
No.
the cure.
Just as long as with Chris and Lizzo is in there somewhere.
We'll just be tiny, tiny,
Absolutely.
like chiseled into the
right
side.
right in the sea.
Yeah.
See?
There you go. There you go. Just as long, yeah, just like a scratching on a tree or something.
Well, Lizzo, we are running out of time as usual. These go by so quickly. And Maddie, just an incredible guest. Appreciate your input.
Just amazing. And I had chills when you were talking. Are there any last words you'd like to say?
I will definitely say, if you couldn't glean this from my entire interview, that I haven't necessarily been as involved as I would like to in the CMTA, but it's something that I want to change moving forward. So if you ever have any question for me or you just want to chat, my information can be made available to anyone who wants to know, or you can friend me on Facebook and send me a message. I have no issues with keeping up contact with anyone who wants to. I mean, I really appreciate it because, like I said, it's something that I've, kind of been quiet about my whole life. And I feel like this is a big step for me to kind of push forward in that feeling of like who I am and stuff. So thank you for the opportunity.
Okay.
I really appreciate it.
Got it.
Good luck
Lizzo,
for the rest of the semester.
So, hey, Lizzo,
yes,
if someone wants to learn more about CMT and or to donate to our cause, where should they go?
CMTAUSA.org. There's so much information on this website, everything you want to know.
You got it. Really, folks, go to the site. Save this as a bookmark. There's just ongoing information, just a library of incredible info for you. And Lizzo, it does take a lot of money to fund research in order to find a cure for CMT. If someone was so inclined to donate to our cause generously, please go to CMTAUSA.org.
And to all our listeners, do you have a good story? Would you like to tell your story on our CMT for Me podcast? If you do, write to us, info@cmtausa.org, and pitch your idea. We do want to hear from you.
You're right. Lizzo, I hear we have a new intern for our podcast,
awesome.
and she's doing a fabulous job. Her name is Ashley Feller.
Yes, she is amazing. She has a lot of creative ideas. She's really made our Facebook group or page, whatever it is, expand, and there's a lot of new interests. So thank you, Ashley. So why don't you all go to Facebook, look up CMT for Me podcast, and like or follow our page, and then you'll get more and more clips and interviews of what we're doing. So you can also listen to the podcast CMT for Me on Apple Podcasts and write us a review.
So why is it important for people to write a review, Lizzo?
Well, because it encourages more people to listen. We get more people to come in and tell their stories, and we're helping the whole CMTA community.
You got it. I love it. And that's a close. Later, sis. Wahoo-wah.
Wahoo-wah, Chris, and toodaloo kangaroo.
Jeez. All right.